Hello and welcome back to my mapping series. So what we will do this fine morning is this presumed barbed wire obstacle. And I kind of want to make that a bit more substantial since it's the only barbed wire obstacle that is apparently on the map. So it will also have at least some anti-tank capability as well. So I'm going to use the following trick, similar to what I do with fences. So first of all, we need to find a bunch of stuff we can use in there. To be honest, I always forget where the barbed wire is because I don't necessarily use it that often. Probably under barriers, yeah. So obviously we don't want to use anything from the from the Atlantic Wall. Let's see. Let's just first look at some which we can use. It should be one that is, yeah, that looks fairly improvised, I would say. I want to have two lines and okay, yeah. Now there's a lot of different ones. No, I don't want to use that. Or that. It should be one of those. Ooh. You know what? Let's go for the big option. Does that have, yeah. What is that one? No, I don't want to use that. That looks more like a temporary barrier. Maybe we will put that next to the road, like they use that to close the road. Have we looked at that yet? Nah, okay, that's hardly a fence. Okay, so that will be the basic part. What I want you to do now is make it look a bit cooler. Yeah, Belgian gates and so on. Beach ramps are obviously for Normandy. But these kind of things, there's no reason they wouldn't be used in the on the Eastern Front as well, because they're just improvised kind of. Well, okay, that's against boats, obviously. What is that tank barrier? No. For tank barriers, I have something else in mind. Let's use these swamp blocks here. Yeah. These can go. Okay, the one with the mine as well, of course. But the swamp blocks can stay. So, next up, we close this one up. And I think in the Russian one, we also had, maybe under military, yeah, improvised tank trap. I kind of want to use this. I think this is made from like destroyed railway lines or something like that. I kind of want to use that. So what we will do is, first of all, in which direction do we want to place it? Like that. Okay. So first of all, this will go over here. This will be our pivot for the whole thing. So this will stay just normal and upright. Alright. I mean, of course we can pivot it on this axis. Like this. Okay. Then we will add some more. And just make a nice section of this obstacle. Don't overdo it, because too many different objects do actually affect performance to a degree. Deep enough? Yeah, okay. Okay. And then we will put these one in there as well, like they're between the two lines of barbed wire, just to make it look a bit more improvised. is alright. And the last type here, put them in here. And maybe one more here, why not? Close that gap a bit deeper in. Alright. Although the whole thing will be kind of sunk into the ground a bit. So then I want these in front as only slightly move them into the ground as anti-tank obstacles. These are made, I think, from railroad tracks, as I said. And last one here. Okay. So this is gonna be our anti-tank obstacle. In fact, let's extend this a bit in this direction. So, well, what you do now is select most of these things and then select your pivot point last, and then you can basically place them like I did with the fences as well. So it's just CTRL. It will always take a while because all these objects have to be copied. And then you hope you never misclick. And that's basically it. You can then place this as one. We will later add at least some variation, I guess. And what's especially important, we will erase the terrain around it so it looks like snow has accumulated around it, because that's the big theme on the map in terms of graphics. And yeah, that's how that works. I'm gonna speed it up now a little bit and then talk next a bit about some gameplay things here. Okay, so the rough placement is done. So some notes generally on this method. First of all, as I said before, be careful not to overdo it. I might have actually, but yeah, you can place a lot of objects like this quickly, and that's not always the best idea. Now, the second thing that can happen, not in this case as much, but in certain other areas where you might use this, because you can basically, what you can do with this method is create your own custom statics out of all kinds of stuff. For example, in old maps I sometimes did this. Take as an example Dukla Pass, I made these kind of custom made barns and shit. Now the thing with that is, you might run into trouble with light mapping, especially if small objects are, if the pivot of small objects is too close together, which shouldn't be the case here. I deleted all instances where that is the case. But in that case, the light mapping engine cannot tell them apart, and you get doubled up light maps, which can look shit in certain circumstances. So be mindful of that. Basically, just don't overdo it. Now, gameplay-wise, in general, and this might sound somewhat counterintuitive, but you don't want to place actually effective barriers. You don't, like, you shouldn't think like that. You know, you place them where they look cool, or where they're historically accurate, and you use them to channel players into areas where they basically want to go already, right? Might sound weird, but basically it's like that. So the next thing we will do is add gaps in this, either where Soviet sappers already removed them, like for example here. I think I might I might just leave a gap in there and just leave some of these little logs here, like they removed them or something like that. Or where they got blown up, of course. So I will add more damage around the areas where there already is damage, so that players can run through. In this case, also, if I look at this, I might have to lower them all a little bit, simply because otherwise they block block fire a bit too much. Although I will also, of course, raise the terrain here. So there's that. And of course, in front of firing positions, I will remove them to create channels of fire. But yeah. Actually, I don't think I need to lower them much, but I certainly need to remove some of them to create these channels of fire. So yeah, I'm gonna do that now. So I placed the obstacles, some thoughts. So in front of the gun positions, I placed this. I think it's supposed to be like destroyed, but it's basically very similar to the normal one, but a lot more easy to see through. Then you might have noticed that during placing it, I checked the collision meshes. That works like this. You can go here, draw collision meshes, and then check the different meshes of the static. So there's a decal mesh which shows where decals are shown, for example, bullet impacts. Physics mesh, which is, as far as I know, how vehicles interact with something. A soldier mesh, which is how infantry interacts with something, and then AI, which is obviously for AI, which you probably don't need. Now, what I checked is these do interact with vehicles, so they can stop vehicles. Because of that, I deleted them everywhere where there wasn't an obvious anti-tank obstacle in front of them. So you should always be mindful of these interactions and where vehicles can be stopped, where soldiers can be stopped, and so on. Just keep that in mind. Another thing, I placed these in areas where the barbed wire had been removed or destroyed. These single things here. Now these are the versions of these barbed wire pillars or whatever that have a collision mesh, so they do interact with soldiers, at least if they still work like that. Yeah, see, so they have a collision mesh, you can interact with them. So for these down here, I use the ones that don't have one. For those lie there, so it looks like the Russians removed them in the night in this little ditch area, which seems possible that they snuck through here close to the German lines and removed this in front or before the actual attack, which is something that happened a lot. So for these on the ground, I use the ones without collision mesh because it can be hard to see them, especially later when there will be bushes and shit. And so you don't, generally speaking, you don't want people to get stuck. You really have to be mindful of that. I will maybe go into this some more when we're talking about adding really small details, because that's where this easily can happen. But yeah, just keep in mind, always be mindful of where can people get stuck, how can you prevent that. So anyway, first order of the day is done. We added this barbed wire obstacle where it really was in real life as well. A second order of the day will be adding some more damage where the roads are. I don't know if I will already redo the roads or only do the damage. We will see that, but yeah, that's the next thing. After that I will probably move into the OOB area here and start working on, forgot what the name was, on the next little shitty village. Alright, had a little pause, and we will carry on now. So one thing I decided to do before doing the whole damaged road thing, I want to move up this machine gun nest, because it never had a great field of fire, but now it's actually a bit worse. So I think if I move it up like between or into the obstacle, that kind of looks cool. And also I don't think it's too overpowered and looks directly into the Russian main base, because there is this hill here and the forest there, so it should be fine. So anyway, that's my next project now. Okay, So that was a relatively quick fix, luckily. A bit tricky in the end with the two half pieces, but fine. And now you have a decent field of fire here, hopefully not too overpowered, but I don't think so actually. So yeah. One thing, I might actually have to implement some kind of German forward spawn as well, just so they can, because I want to keep their spawn points for this sector behind here, but that's pretty far forward to get here before the Russians, especially if the Russians have a forward spawn point here. So maybe what I'll end up doing is do the old Omaha trick, invisible flags. As soon as the Russians take them, they get the forward spawn point and the German ones vanish. Could be an interesting idea. We will see. Gameplay stuff we will do later. Okay, so finally done with this part. Now we will add some damage. Alright, so I'm looking at the area in Google Earth, and this is where Emilianovo was, which we have basically finished. And so next to it, you can see there ran this ditch which separated from the next village, which was down here. And I kind of want to recreate that ditch and fill it with vegetation in order to serve as the gameplay area boundary. We already have parts of that here, as you can see, this area here, and then the ditch goes on here, but I want to make it more pronounced here. I'm not really happy with how that looks, and I want to connect it with this part here. Now in order to do that, I'm actually going to use a road to mess with the height map. That's another method that you can use. Just create a new spline, add control points as normal. And then, because that can look better than if you do it by hand. It's not necessary to do it this way, obviously. Sorry. Okay. Then we will connect it up here. Like this maybe. Doesn't have to look great. Alright. Then we will sink that into the ground to make a ditch. And I think we will actually use this method a lot in the forest to vary up the terrain there and create some flow. Because that can be a problem in the forest if you just automatically generate the whole thing with the OG tool. And then you just do the apply splines thing. Hope that it didn't break anything, but shouldn't have. No, okay. Here we go. And then we have a nice ditch. Obviously we have to smooth that out, delete the spline. Because you don't need that anymore. Now we need to smooth that out, paint it with the pink detail texture, and fill it in with vegetation. And after that, if you can see, and this is why I'm actually happy with how everything turned out. It really lines up with where the other village was, just separated from this one by this ditch here. And then there was this low-lying area. Now I don't have a texture slot for ice really, Alright, kind of skipped over the last part, but I placed a few more trees over there and a few more chimneys over there. Since this is all OOB, it doesn't really need to look all that great. We will later, when we do the overgrowth stuff, we will also place automatically generated trees around here to make it look a bit better. But other than that, I think this is good enough for the OOB area. So next time we will finish up that low detail kind of village with this area, where we will place some detail here, of course, and then over there also just sketch it out with the chimneys. And after that we'll move towards the Russian main base. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. As always, thanks for watching. Have a nice day.